9 extremely underrated indie horror games that deserve your attention. The indie horror genre is a never-ending gift, with a new favorite going viral among the crowd or rising the ranks of Steam's most popular list virtually every day. Not only are a few of them odd, but a number of them are downright terrifying, which is frequently impressive given the size of some of the development teams involved. There are lots of wonderful early access options circling the seas, as well as even more that have had full releases but aren't publicly known, but have succeeded to either win over critics or garner some excellent user scores. With so many disturbing and thought-provoking games flying under the spotlight, it's difficult to keep track of them all. To that end, we've compiled a list of indie horror games you might have missed in 2021. If you're looking for something a little unique, anything on this list is guaranteed to pique your curiosity. Post-trauma. When it comes to horror games, Silent Hill is one of the most well-known, thanks to its disturbing tale and eerie environments. Silent Hill is a juggernaut of unnerving dread that continues to inspire developers to this day. It is considered one of the greatest horror games of the 1990s. Now, a new game called Post-Trauma is being developed, and it's heavily influenced by the legendary Survivor series. There isn't much information on the game yet, but several images were included in a tweet. The photographs show a sequence of disturbing stills, including one of a sorrowful person on an empty metro train, a ghastly crimson monster with 2 heads, and somebody standing in front of a terrifying beast that appears to be poised to attack. While Post-Trauma is a new adventure with sophisticated graphics, it appears that it may be drawing inspiration from traditional survival horror cliches from the past. According to the creator, the game would be in third, and with some first-person horror tossed in for good measure, similar to Silent Hill 4. While third perspectives were once king, first-person is becoming the de facto standpoint for a number of modern horror games. Static camera shots may be a relic from the past in games like Outlast, Alien Isolation, and the latest Resident Evil incarnations, but games like Post-Trauma appear to want to bring them back into popularity. The world of video games is currently through a golden period of horror, with games like Song of Horror emulating great titles. Maybe Post-Trauma is aiming to be doing something comparable as well. In any case, there's no wrong in being inspired by one of the genre's most well-known gaming franchises. Silent Hill's enduring effect is evidenced by the fact that modern horror games still look to it for inspiration. Post-Trauma is still being developed, and a demo will be available soon. Hidden deep. Something dreadful is happening down below the surface of the ocean, and the first team dispatched to investigate has vanished. Team 1 has broken communication after establishing a research station and infrastructure around it. A candidate of the second team dispatched to look into what happened in the underwater caves, you'll have to contend with a variety of animals and horror that dwell within the Hidden Deep. It's all about authenticity in Hidden Deep. The characters are extremely frail and must traverse comparatively straightforward locations with a lot of gear. They must also gently shove themselves off a cliff, that they shatter every bone that matters. At first, this was a minor irritation, but as you get into the swing of things, it becomes a joy. The frantic feeling from the tiny flying berry monster was hilarious. You will have a lot of fun navigating the grappling hooks without dying or colliding with a wall. It is difficult, intriguing, and most importantly, enjoyable. The game is a 2-dimensional shooter. You control a fragile character with a weak weapon, a toolbox, and one incredibly handy grasping gun with endless rope and hooks. Hidden Deep is about exploring caves, which usually entails frantically searching for keys, levers, and buttons to press. There are also a few creepy species to keep an eye out for. For the horror genre, this is pretty normal entertainment. Hidden Deep has a fantastic appearance. If I wasn't paying attention, I'd think the character models were photos of real individuals. The creatures are simplistic, but it adds the appeal of the encounter. It reminded me of the simple monsters in Stalker, one of my favorite games, which, despite their simplicity, turned out to be frightening. The ambiguity of what was going on added to the allure of the adventure. For all that this game offers, make sure to get your hands on this underrated late 2022 release so that you can live this experience all for yourself. It is available on Xbox One, Microsoft Windows, Linux, Nintendo Switch, and Macintosh operating systems. Tormented Souls. Since Konami scrapped the project it had started with Hideo Kojima, Silent Hill fans have been without a new game to look forward to. Despite the fact that fans have remained alert and several good alternatives have emerged, Konami's horror brand has left a hole. Fortunately, indie creators Dual Effect and Abstract Digital saw the need for a classic horror sensation on modern platforms and built a game to address the issue. Tormented Souls was recently launched on PC and PlayStation 5, with PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Xbox Series XS, and Nintendo Switch versions on the way. For anyone who recalls clenching their teeth in the darkness while wandering through monster-infested foggy towns, the game is a retro horror adventure. Tormented Souls preserves the spirit of horror classics such as Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and Alone in the Dark by reintroducing fixed camera shots and other distinguishing elements while delivering an original, disturbing story. What began as a research into suspicious communication quickly develops into a battle for survival. The setup alone is reminiscent of an old Silent Hill game, filled with cartoonish dialogue and eerie, strange NPCs. Tormented Souls, in fact, goes to such measures to mimic the classic horror feel and tone that it might well be mistaken for a long-forgotten PS2 title. Although the horror game is more Silent Hill than Resident Evil, traditional horror lovers will adore it. Tormented Soul throws players into a brutal environment right away, doing away with any kind of modern tutorial. Instead, players are yanked from command right away, waking up deep within the depths of a mansion-turned-hospital as the fresh victim of some fiendish forced surgery. Tormented Souls in many ways fills the gap in classic horror game lovers' libraries that has existed for years. While it can be a bit janky at times, the devs appear to be dedicated to the project and have already provided multiple patches in the few weeks it's been available on PC. Even back then, it's not like games in the early 2000s were without flaws. That's the trouble with Tormented Souls. Every review will unavoidably include a reference to Silent Hill and its contemporaries. This would be a bad thing or a lack of identity for other titles. However, in this instance of Tormented Souls, that is the perfect result, and it works. Don't torment your soul by missing out on this gameplay. Trenches. Trenches is similar to most Slender Man analogs in that you must find the clues before the monster catches you. You must crouch to avoid causing a disturbance and find hidden areas in case you are captured. Trenches excels in establishing a terrifying environment that will even frighten horror aficionados despite its simplicity. It's not very often that you'll find yourself pausing a horror game to take a break. The Trenches, on the other hand, accomplishes just that. The genuine photographs from World War I and the cries of dying soldiers pleading for rescue produced an intense experience, especially when played with headphones. Trenches is a design masterpiece in practically every way. With short pauses before hearing the yells of warriors in the background, the sound design misleads you into thinking you're safe. Even the creature's tracks demonstrated how foolish it was for me to take that right turn into a dead end. If you saw the creature through a crack in the wall, it had a simple design but was immensely terrifying. The trenches themselves, though, are the most interesting feature. You'll run through the same region several times without recognizing it, like a rat stuck in a maze. All of these good elements work together to produce a well-crafted ambience that will appeal to most indie horror fans. Trench whistles were also used by Steel Krill Studio, the game's creators, to add to the dread. Troops in the trenches used trench whistles to deliver instructions and coordinate movements. They do, however, provide auditory indications for where the hints are in the trenches. The problem is that the noise instantly alarms the monster. Fear is a big element of this gameplay, undoubtedly. Those considering purchasing this game should be aware of the developer's commitment to providing an entertaining experience. Since July 26, 2021, The game has been continuously updated. There is now a no jump scare mode, as well as bug fixes and AI upgrades. As a result, returning to Trenches at a future date may yield a somewhat different result. Overall, you are guaranteed to have a fantastic time with this game, and I would suggest it to anyone seeking for a good scare. This is a beautifully made horror game that is well worth your time, played with friends or alone on a Friday night for a nice scare. You can check out Trenches, World War I horror survival game on PC via Steam Early Access. Kingdom of the Dead. Kingdom of the Dead is an anticipated old-style first-person shooter in which you must kill Death and his armies in a black and white pen and ink version of 1867 America. If you're worried about merely killing dangerous creatures in a stunning atmosphere, the store page is rich with its lore. You play as a professor-turned-army general, serving for a mysterious government scheme aimed to fighting Death and his soldiers in the wake of the American Civil War. Agent Chamberlain, a former academic who became an army general, now works for Gatekeeper, a top-secret government program. Their main goal is to combat Death, who has just gained new powers, and his ever-increasing army of the dead. Death's army increased with new soldiers from both sides after the fight. With his newfound strength, he was able to launch an onslaught against a weakened overworld. Even now, he is staging a stealth assault by massing his demons in the city's shadows. Only you, Agent Chamberlain, can find their escapes and prevent the progeny from infiltrating your realm as they ready to emerge from hell and burst through the darkest wells, graves, and cellars. Dirigo Games promises traditional FPS action with varied goals at each difficulty level, 8 different weaponry, over 22 undead adversaries, and a never-ending onslaught in its endless gaming mode. It is visually unique and equally captivates the player with its gameplay mechanics and fairly straightforward storyline too. The game is available on Steam and is compatible with Windows. The experience is truly one of a kind, and it competes with the best indie horror games out there, and is not to be missed out at any costs. Death Trash. As the game starts, your character is kicked out of your ingenious underground civilization in Death Trash. Now it's up to you to find out how to make a living in the real world. Except that this universe isn't like the rest. Massive biomasses of flesh appear to be growing out of the ground. Mutants are out of control. There are a lot of bandits around. And the folks are so depressed by reality that they act as though they're trapped in a sickening, never-ending nightmare. With nowhere else to turn, all you can do is venture out into the world, explore ancient ruins, and stuff your pockets with sweet rubbish. Death Trash is clearly influenced by classic turn-based role-playing games, but it's also something completely different. You'll be pitted against a variety of opponents. Death Trash is about discovery more than anything else. There are dozens of locations to visit, and more are on the way. Each location is an interesting part of this wacky, often smeary, gruesome universe. There's a lot to like about this game. The ambiance, the gameplay, and the concept are all excellent. But most importantly is Death Trash's appearance. This is a terribly disgusting and filthy game. People eating raw meat from the ground, undulating fleshy animals, and hitting F to vomit on the ground in order to add that puke to your inventory. In a sense that is unique, it's visually antagonistic. Death Trash is a reassuring game to play. Unlike many other early access games, the content limit does not appear to be a major disappointment. Death Trash has most likely exceeded everyone's aspirations. This is a game with a true aesthetic vision, and you will be ecstatic to have the opportunity to play it as soon as possible. It is available on PlayStation 4, Xbox Series X and Series S, Xbox One, so you have no excuse to not play this unique game. Strangeland. Our main character, an amnesiac left stranded in a carnival-themed hellhole, dons a familiar form almost immediately after starting the game. A man who sees a woman in danger and becomes overwhelmed by the desire to save her. Our shackled hero has no idea who he is or how he ended up in Strangeland, but the sight of a mystery blonde in a hospital gown transforms him into a man on a quest.
Still burning with questions.
Where am I?
You'll find out soon enough.
Strangeland's producers shared snippets of the universe and facts about its creation on the road to the film's release. A dark, frightening story inspired by several writers, devs. Bulging mounds of flesh, incomprehensible insectoid entities, and recurring shots of the blonde, enigmatic lady imprisoned in a meat nest riddled with bugs. There are flashes of grotesque imagery. The natural inking, potent surroundings, and somber hue are pleasantly unsettling, and the voice acting is excellent. There are very satisfying puzzles involved in this game, which are a staple of any adventure survival game. One of Strangeland's biggest achievements is organically taking inspiration from other games of the similar kind and providing a decent spin of its own, much to the player's pleasure, thereby finding an interesting way to deal with portraying horror elements. A strange tree, supposedly representing Yggdrasil, a knowledgeable old man with no eyes whose name reflects the dawn of Ragnarok, Odin had one eye, a fortune-telling head named Murmur, and all-knowing dark ravens. There's distinct hint of Norse mythology throughout. The circle of death and resurrection is central to Norse mythology, as it is to many other world mythologies, and it is a concept that recurs throughout Strangeland when your character dies. Strangeland has an ending that is an eye-opening for the players, and it stands to reason as to why this must be in the hands of every indie horror game aficionado for their own good, as it goes far and beyond the expectations of the gamers. You can find it on Macintosh Windows, Linux, Mac OS, Macintosh operating systems. VENEFICIUM. Her family, her home, and all she owned were all destroyed in the fire. Abigail is a young witch who has recently lost all she owns, with the exception of her grandmother, who went missing during their village's evacuation. In the quest for her grandma, she's now on the run for cultists and something even more deadly. The word veneficium is derived from the Latin word veneficus, which implies toxic or supernatural. It's appropriate for more than simply your role as a witch. Along the way, you collect plants and blossoms, as well as human and animal body parts, in order to mix concoctions for spells to ward off the terrifying beast you stumble across in the forests. The notion that you must rely on the land and what it provides in order to exist might lead to some interesting puzzles and thinking in determining which spells or materials would be most effective in various circumstances. The overall graphic and audio design of the game is something to look forward to. The 2D graphics at the introduction and conclusion of the demo, as well as the sounds and voice acting, were all fantastic. Abigail's voice actress did an excellent job at conveying the essence of the character. VENEFICIUM was indeed a good game altogether, and indie gamers will be happy to acquire a piece of it. It's a frightening, intriguing game that thinks outside the box. It has a creepy Halloween feel to it, and I'd love to be playing it one October night after turning off all the lights, curling up in a blanket with some hot cocoa. You can get it on Steam for Windows. A Tale of Paper. In the instance of today's game, A Tale of Paper, the game incorporates an original premise in which you can flip between several shapes, each of which grants your character unique skills. A Tale of Paper is a charming origami-themed platformer with an intriguing atmosphere, although it's a bit short and easy. In A Tale of Paper, you take on the role of Line. Line is essentially a piece of paper that comes to life in order to realize its creator's idea. Line has the power to morph into various shapes using origami. Each of these forms provides you with a unique set of powers. The frog is the first form you'll see in the game. The frog can jump far higher than the other forms, but it can't move elsewhere. A paper ball that rolls down slopes and through small gaps, a paper airplane that floats through the air, and other shapes are examples of other forms. To continue, you must switch between the forms by pressing the appropriate button. The game is a cross between a 2D platformer and a 3D platformer. Most of the time, the world just cycles between left and right. Like any other 3D platformer, you can move in any direction. There is some mild problem solving in addition to the platforming features. A Tale of Paper earns praise for its overall mood and story, in addition to its pleasant gameplay. The art style of the game does a wonderful job of utilizing the origami motif. You take on the role of a small, paper creature. Therefore, the game is all about scale. Things that would typically be straightforward become far more difficult for line. For an independent game, the graphics are surprisingly nice. It resembles an artsy game in many respects. This is carried over into the story of the game. There is no textual or audible dialogue in the game. Therefore, the tale is a little hazy. The surroundings and your interactions with it tell the majority of the story. As a result, it's a story that you must define for yourself. Even though folks who dislike conceptual stories may have a different opinion, it is still intriguing. At the end of the day, A Tale of Paper is a puzzle platformer. Much of the play is around hopping between levels and completing simple puzzles to clear a way to the next level. The inclusion of the origami feature is where the game distinguishes itself. As you go through the game, you'll be able to unlock new forms for your character, each with its own set of skills. This is a unique concept that is also pretty enjoyable because you are forced to move between various forms in order to take advantage of each form's abilities. Fans of puzzle platformers or the premise should appreciate the game. Whether you should buy the game at once or wait for a sale depends on how important game duration is to you. Nonetheless, we strongly advise you to give it a try because it is a once-in-a-lifetime experience that you will undoubtedly enjoy.